Do you remember the feeling of being trapped? In life, we all chase something. It can be love, success, addiction. But as we are in this chase, something strange happens. We begin to lose touch with something very important ourselves. How many times have you found yourself walking a path that you never chose, only to realize much later it was never meant for you? Throughout history, stories have echoed this timeless struggle. From ancient philosophers to modern day thinkers, the notion of losing oneself in pursuit of something greater has been a theme we wrestle with. Kierkegaard believed that this despair is not just inevitable, it's hidden. We don't notice it immediately, but in the beginning, every pursuit feels like a promise of fulfillment. Yet, with each passing day, we edge closer to losing sight of who we really are. Things we chase may not even belong to us. Nina Sayer, the protagonist of Black Swan, is a deeply compelling and tragic character. From the very beginning, Nina is driven by her desire to be the perfect ballerina. Her life revolves entirely around dance, with no room for anything else. She yearns to secure the role of the Swan Queen in a company's production, Swan Lake, a dual part that requires her to embody both the pure innocent white swan and the sensual reckless black swan. While Nina's technical precision makes her a natural fit for the white swan, her director Thomas believes she lacks the passion and carefree nature required for the black swan. This criticism becomes the seed of Nina's obsession. Determined to prove herself, she begins to lose touch with reality, her mind unraveling under the pressure to embody perfection. Nina's pursuit of perfection starts to isolate her from the world around her. Her relationship with her mother, Erica, deteriorates as Nina pushes against her suffocating control. As the pressure mounts, Nina begins to hallucinate, blurring the lines between her ambition and her fears. She sees herself in Lily, her darker and freer counterpart, and doing so, loses her grip on her identity. And it all comes down crashing in the final performance of The Black Swan, the final stage of Nina's descent. She has embraced the darkness needed to portray the Black Swan, but at an immense cost. By the time she reaches the climax of the performance, she fights with Lily in the green room, killing her in the process, only to discover the bloodied body is her own reflection. Nina's final words, "I was perfect," encapsulates the heartbreaking irony of her journey. In achieving the perfection which she already had in the white swan part, she craved something that was not her. She lost everything, her sanity, her relationships, and ultimately, her life. Her singular pursuit of greatness consumed her entirely, leaving nothing behind but her performance. Greek mythology gives us the story of Sisyphus, condemned to eternal toil. His boulder represents not just his punishment but our own struggles, as we chase after goals that feel endless. Philosopher Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, reinterprets the myth to reflect the human condition, the never-ending search for meaning in a world that offers none. Camus concluded that one must imagine Sisyphus happy, content in his task, even it ultimately leads nowhere. Much like Sisyphus, we do continue our pursuits, driven by the hope that the next achievement will finally bring us fulfillment. Just one more day, and we might find what we want. But slowly the lines become blurry, the things we once loved has faded, and when we step back, we realize the person who started the chase is no longer there. There is just a hollow shell of a person, consumed by the very thing he once fell in love with.
Please stop! Please don't do this. Joel, please get up!
After Joel's brutal murder, Ellie is consumed by trauma and anger, igniting an understandable need for justice, one I could completely relate to. Joel was her father figure, her anchor, and her world. I felt her pain, her rage, her desperation. At the start, I was with Ellie on this path of revenge, completely supporting her resolve because in my heart, I believed Joel would have done the same for her. As the journey unfolds in Seattle, Ellie built a mountain of corpses to get to Abby, killing without hesitation or remorse. But as the body count rose, her actions began to feel monstrous. Even though I tried to justify it because it was for Joel, yet when she touches Nora at the hospital compound for information about Abby, something inside shattered. At that moment, Ellie lost something far more precious than the woman she sought. She lost her humanity. The compassionate, loving girl we once knew was gone, consumed by her obsession. The crack in Ellie's sense of reality became even more apparent when she left Jessie behind. Someone who only wanted to help her find Tommy, she chose to walk her own path no matter the cost. And then Mel's death, a point that feels like a point of no return. Killing Mel wasn't just another life taken in the name of revenge, it was a life of a pregnant woman. The weight of this act was suffocating. Ellie's reaction said it all. Shaking, gasping for air, she realized what she has done. But it was too late. It was though the gravity of her actions finally began to creep into her mind. And then Jesse. His death was so sudden, so brutal, that I barely had time to process it. One moment he was there, loyal, determined to help Ellie no matter the risk, and the next, he was gone. A casualty of Ellie's unrelenting quest. His death wasn't just heartbreaking, it was infuriating because Jesse deserved so much better. It was at that point I felt the journey wasn't just breaking Ellie, it was breaking everyone around her, and still, she couldn't see it clearly. Naughty Dog delivered an emotionally devastating moment at the farmhouse. A brief glimpse of the peace Ellie could have had with Dinah and the baby. For a moment, it felt like a farewell, a quiet ending to a painful journey. But then Tommy arrives with the news of Abby, reigniting Ellie's obsession. My reaction mirrored Dinah's. Let it go, Ellie. Yet, Ellie couldn't. She still believed that revenge would grant her peace. In chasing that illusion, she lost her family and the happiness she could have built. Exhausted, we reach Rattler's compound, and after fighting hordes of enemies, we find Abby. Broken, starved, barely alive. I remember pleading in my mind, Ellie, stop, just go home. But she doesn't. The final confrontation unfolds, a desperate and brutal fight where Ellie loses two of her fingers in the process. And in that moment, finally, she realizes that it isn't worth it. She lets Abby go. Ellie returns to an empty house, a haunting symbol of her life she sacrificed for vengeance. Dina is gone, taking the baby with her. And then comes the final crushing blow. Ellie picks up Joel's guitar, only to find she can no longer play it because of the fingers she lost in her pursuit of Abby. The weight of that moment is unbearable, especially when you remember her biggest fear from the first game, to end up alone. Philosophers have long debated the relationship between the sense of purpose and the risk of losing ourselves in the process. Nietzsche warned us about the dangers of becoming consumed by our ambitions, by desires that are not even our own. We chase goals that others have defined as success, but in doing so, we risk transforming into something unrecognizable. We fight for validation, but lose the essence of who we are. The existentialists have raised the critical question: how do we live authentically in a world filled with distractions, expectations, and desires? Ranjanam begins with a warm, innocent depiction of young love. The youthful moment between Zoya and Kundan are filled with playful charm, a mix of endearing antics and problematic undertones, yet they capture the naivety of the first love perfectly. However, as the story progresses, Kundan's journey takes a darker turn, a descent into obsession, sacrifice, and the devastating realization of unrequited love. From the onset, Kundan's feeling for Zoya appears innocent and pure, almost poetic. He sees her as his destiny, the axis upon which his entire life revolves. But as the story unfolds, his love transforms into an consuming force, blinding him to reality. Zoya's feelings for Kundan are not the same, and she makes it abundantly clear. Yet Kundan refuses to accept her rejection. His unwavering devotion drives every decision he makes. And while his intentions are pure, his actions cross the line, leaving me questioning just how far someone would go in the name of love. Kundan's transformation is subtle at first, but becomes unsettling as the story unfolds. What begins as a playful infatuation, the boy ringing Zoya's doorbell just to catch a glimpse of her, slowly darkens as his action chips away at him. That innocent love morphs into an all-consuming obsession. Kundan becomes reckless, blind to the harm he is causing himself and to everyone around him. His pursuit of Zoya entangles him in a dangerous political conflict, and suddenly, the boy who once loved with his whole heart becomes a desperate, broken shell of himself. And then there is the point of no return, Zoya's betrayal. Or perhaps it's the culmination of every sacrifice Kundan has made for Zoya. Zoya manipulates Kundan, using his unwavering loyalty to her for her own agenda. Blinded by his love, Kundan follows her without question, even when it leads to violence and bloodshed. And that's when it struck me. It wasn't love anymore. It was destruction, masquerading as devotion. When Kundan dies in the end, it's not just a physical death. It's a symbolic death, the death of hope, his innocence, and the life he could have lived if only he had let go sooner. His haunting final words, "अभी उठ तो जाऊं, पर साला उठ के करे भी क्या," encapsulates his journey perfectly. It makes you grieve for the boy who once had innocent dreams but was consumed by love that gave him no reason to keep going. So, what I am really trying to say through all these stories, at their core, each of these tales revolves around a character spiraling into self destruction. And in each case, their pain, their choices, their tragedies, none of it was inevitable. Ellie, Nina, Kundan, each of them had someone they could have turned to, someone who could have pulled them back from the edge. Their friends, their loved ones, scattered around them. They were there. But the problem wasn't just that they didn't listen to others, it was that they didn't pause to listen to themselves. And this is where it becomes personal, because maybe you are in that place too. Maybe you are stuck in a loop, making choices that hurt more than they help, chasing something that is slipping away further. If that's you, stop. Take a breath. Look around. Someone is there, even if it doesn't feel like it. Someone will listen, will care. And if no one feels close enough, sit with yourself. Really sit. Ask yourself the hard questions. Why am I doing this? What am I chasing? Is it still worth it? The path forward lies not in abandoning your pursuits, but in balancing them. Stopping when you know that particular path is not for you. Things we chase, love, success, validation, are not inherently wrong. They are part of human experience. But we must also recognize that the path we have walked may have never been meant for us. Letting go isn't failure, it's reclaiming your identity from the things that were never yours to chase.